Okay, so this sales lesson is going to be talking about monsters. And what I mean about monsters is there's some monsters you're going to face up with when you're in sales or entrepreneurship. Now, these aren't actual physical monsters. It's not like Zelensky is showing up like, give me your money and go to war. That's not actually what's happening with these monsters. What's actually happening with these monsters is conversations you have with yourself when your own mind tries to convince you that failing is a better option than succeeding. And this happens a lot. We give up on things that are hard. And sometimes, and most of the time, the hardest challenge is to overcome your own thoughts and your own emotions because you make irrational decisions thinking they're rational. So for example, one of these monsters is the monster of, I already know how to do this. It's quite frequent that in the past, when we didn't screen hiring salespeople so well, people would come in thinking they know what to do, and they wouldn't be open to training because they thought they knew better, and then they would fail. And it's like, well, if you just listened, and if you just took my feedback, and if you just improved, and by the way, this actually happened to me in hockey. Like, I'm a goalie in hockey, and I got to a level without a coach where I got good enough to get to a certain level. But I wasn't dominating that level by any means. It was, I was competing, but I wasn't going to move forward. And then a goalie coach, my dad brought in a goalie coach and he was paying him like $30 an hour. This is like 20 years ago. And he started telling me, he's like, hey, you need to readjust your positioning like this and that, because what you're doing, like, let's say as a goalie, is you're leaving yourself vulnerable to higher level players doing these better things. And I didn't listen to him because I'm like, well, I've always done it this way, 15-year-old arrogant me, 16-year-old arrogant me. And I wouldn't readjust my game, and therefore my game didn't grow. And you see this a lot too, like my kids play tennis. So I see in tennis, they're like, hold the racket like this, do it like that. And they try to fight against the coach because it's less comfortable for them. But the coach knows what happens next. That's true, right? And so this idea, like, I already know what I'm doing. And I see this especially when people who suck at something give advice. Like, I have sometimes people who want to be in leadership, and they've never let anybody successfully tell me how to be a better leader. And it's like, you, my friend, are poisoned with the I already know how to do it monster. Because you're like, oh, I know better, but like, you haven't shown it. And unless you're actually better, you don't know. Results are the whole story. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So if you're not getting the results you want, you need help. Admit it. Surrender. Quit your, quit being unscrupulous. Quit being a donkey. Quit being proud. The monster of I know how to do this. Well, do you? Do you have the results to prove it, to show consistently that you can do it? That would be a question I would ask. And so I kind of just covered that one. Let's go to the next one. Fear of failure. Yeah. This is an extremely nasty, I'm going to read it. Extremely nasty monster as old as time itself. Fear of failure forces you not to try to do things you might fail at because of fear of failure. And we see this a lot. People don't try to do things they might fail at because they think they might fail, but they excuse themselves from it. They're like, oh, I'm not going to try that because I'm too good for that. I'm not going to try that because this is my definition of a communist, right? As somebody that doesn't participate in the capitalist economy because they add no value. And it's like, I had a friend in high school, I tell the story a lot, and he was an out of shape guy. Like, it was very difficult to get him to do anything because he was so lazy. And whenever he saw a beautiful woman, he's like, she's too skinny. Like, I would never date that. I'm like, dude, nobody's picking you, bro. Zero, not one. But in his mind, he was writing them off, not because he found them not attractive, but because he communicated that he did, because he wanted moral authority over being a loser. Wow, what a domain to own, huh? You get moral authority over being a loser. Congratulations, king of the losers, So fear of failure usually expresses itself, and I see this a lot of people like, the capitalism is rigged against. It's like, yeah, capitalism is rigged against useless people. You are useless. That's why I'm not afraid of you, because you're useless. So the fear of failure monster usually does not express itself as I'm afraid to fail. It usually expresses itself as some form of arrogance, narcissistic entitlement, and such other things. Don't be afraid to fail. Like, failure is coming for you whether you want it or not. The question is, do you want the short failure or the long failure? Like, the short failure is like, look, you're going to be doing some things that require you to fail from time to time in order to grow and get better at them. And the long failure is not doing those things and not growing. And the long failure hurts more. So make your choice on that. And I think I'm going to leave it at those two. I have quite a few other monsters here. There's actually quite a significant list, but I want to leave it at those two. I want to leave it at the fear of failure. Like, what are you afraid to confront because you're afraid you might fail? Maybe it's time to run towards that and do it. It's not nothing to do something. And I had an interview with Russell Peters. They're going to come out soon. You're going to see it online. It's like, he talks about how failure is so important to learn from, because that's the only way you know how to do something better. Conjecturing it in your mind, like, oh, what would work, what doesn't work, doesn't mean anything until you've tried it in the market. and the market will tell you exactly what you're worth. And don't think you can do it better unless you've actually shown the results. That's today's lesson.